All right. Thank you so much, Rajesh, for that introduction. So as Rajesh mentioned, really excited to be presenting this webinar today. We're going to talk about some of the new ideas that we are thinking here in Radia and in Accelerate. And it gives me a great pleasure to be here to talk about some of the thought processes that have gone into creating this new offering, and what this is all about, and what are sort of the capabilities that this will expose. And then we'll have some time at the end for questions, and we'll have some open discussion at that point. Okay. So with that, let me just get started here. So let me set the stage with with an all too familiar reality for most of us, right? I mean, it's probably even more stark reality for all of you guys who are experts in this field and have been doing this for a number of different years, even more than some of our product team here at Radia. But here I'm just seeing I'm just showing the total number of vulnerabilities that have been reported just over the last 4 or 5 years, and you can see that it's not only just a staggering number, but also constantly increasing number, right? And of that, if you see the high severity vulnerabilities, they are also a surprising number of vulnerabilities, which are also high severity. And when you have a high severity vulnerability on your hands, time is of the essence, and you want to move as quickly as possible. Okay, so this was the kind of overall background, and the number of ideas and discussions that we had with a number of you guys, as well as with a variety of different CIOs and partners and so on. So we asked some of these questions, and these were questions that came up commonly in various discussions. How long does it take, by you, I just mean like take anyone, for example, to identify machines exposed to a latest security vulnerability that somebody just found out about? We know the Heartbleed happened, a few months ago, or rather a year ago or so. Then there are other OpenSSL vulnerabilities that keep coming in every now and then, right? So how long does it take, right? Um, if you wanted to identify whether all your sort of antivirus protection, data loss prevention protection software that you have, is it really even running on all the PCs? Can you do that kind of insight on your endpoints quickly, right? Um, this is a big one. Find which machines are still not at the appropriate patch level. Are there certain machines that are more exposed? Maybe there are some production servers which you really wanted to be sure that they're at a certain patch level so they're not compromised in any way, right? Or to determine any machine or process loads across various servers that you have in your network, okay? Or even just finding a rogue file in your network. This is another discussion we had with another a customer, amongst ourselves here. If there is a rogue file, is there some Trojan, if there is something like that in your network on some of the endpoints, how long would it take you? And finally, if you wanted to just find some utilization of your CPU and computing resources, whether it be servers or endpoints for clients, what's happening with those? What is the level of utilization of those? And typically, the answer that we have got from most people that we have talked to, okay, has been that while they would all love this to be in seconds and minutes, it really is a matter of days and weeks. You know, and there's multiple different problems, right? I mean, it isn't like just one definite problem, but the common thread here was that it really does take a long time to get there, right? And this was the sentiment that has been echoed by pretty much everybody who I talked to, right? And we had recently had the opportunity to talk to a number of different CIOs a couple of weeks ago, and this is, they just completely validated this whole problem scenario that we have. And the reality is that finding the problem is really often the hardest part of fixing it. So this is where we set the stage for Radia Live, right? So what is Radia Live? How do we introduce it, and what is it that we are bringing to market? So traditionally, as many of you here on the webinar, you're experts with using Radia for a number of years. So Radia has the classic operations piece, where you can do the configuration, you can do the management of the endpoints, you can get the reporting, all of that good stuff happens through the classic Radia operations, right? And it's now supplemented with the data insights package, which is available from the 9.2 release onwards. Okay, so that gives you a data warehousing solution. You can extract some insights into things that have already happened in your past. All right, so this is information and data that's residing in your repository, whether it be the Radia database or any other database from where you want to extract some insights. So all of that is enabled by data insights. Okay. Um, Similarly, we have a security and compliance piece, which helps um, IT departments to make sure that the commonly known vulnerabilities and security and compliance, they're all in line with what they expect. And I think what we are, bringing with here with Radia Live is the fourth piece of the puzzle, and that's kind of, it's by design that it's kind of about to be put in place. We know how to put it in place, but this is, in the works, and this is the reason we are here talking today about what this capability is. So what Radia Live is going to allow you to do is basically straddle that operations and security compliance sort of space, give you that instantaneous feel, of getting information and insights from your endpoint as quickly as possible, and allow you to deep dive into the issues and vulnerabilities within your network very quickly, in a manner that has never been possible um, with traditional endpoint management systems before. Okay, so what is Radia Live, right? So Radia Live, as I mentioned, it is about providing you the ability to gain endpoint insights immediately. Okay, so what it does, it you know it gets you real-time information from every single endpoint. So this is important, right? So we are not getting information which is in a database, which is in some LDAP repository or cached in a different place somewhere. None of that. What we are doing is we are utilizing some of the most modern technology available to do some big data kind of analysis and crunching and getting information in real time from every endpoint that you have in your network. And it's been tested all the way up to about 100,000 endpoints. Okay. And what it lets you do is identify critical issues related to security, compliance, any malware presence, any configuration which is out of whack with what you wanted. So all of these things we enable you to do through Radia Live. Okay. Um, Now, given the amount of this, just a staggering amount of information that you can potentially collect and report, what is really important, what is equally important, I would say, is to present the information in a form that is actually helpful, right? So that's where we have introduced this whole interactive visual and graphical formats. So we do some real-time streaming analysis of data and present the information directly on a dashboard in a way and in a manner that actually lends itself to quick analysis, and then you can use that information in meaningful ways. So we can get quick insights without getting lost in a lot of noise. I mean, if we get the same information in a lot of text data, you would definitely um, lose the level of information that you can get out of it. The next thing we do um, that I should highlight here is that the queries are in free-form text format. So you don't have to spend a lot of time learning the tool per se or trying to figure out how certain things have to be, either programmed or scripted to get the information. So it is very intuitive. You can literally do it, as easy as like type along, and then, you will get some helper text along with it, and you can complete a query, fire a query, get the results quickly. If you're not satisfied, you just tweak the query, you get the information that you want. Okay. And then the final piece, which is very important, is also once you have the information that you need, you can actually start a remediation path from right there. Okay, so in right where you're watching, you can drill down, you can identify a set of machines where you want to take some actions, right? And then you can trigger a remediation action. Typically, you know, integrates with a endpoint management system like Radia, and we'll make sure that they go through the same pipe, and we can actually get um, get the offending machines remedied. Okay. Here's another view of explaining what really happens. Right. So on the left-hand side, you have all the endpoint resources. So you have a variety of different devices that have specific software characteristics, usage characteristics, security characteristics, most importantly. Okay. And that information is pulled through the Radia Live server, okay, in real time, and then you can actually deliver on your business needs, like maintaining your audit and compliance, analyzing your security vulnerability, making sure your information protection is in place. If you wanted to do some quick endpoint management, updating some patches and so on. If you want to take a action and respond to a particular security incident, then you can do that. We can also do software license management, asset utilization. All of these things are enabled, as you go forward, um, based on the information that you collect, okay, using Radia Live. Now let's look at some of the salient features that um, Radia Live brings, right? So the first thing, I think I mentioned that before a little bit. The trick is in not making this overly complex, because if you make a tool very complicated, then the adoption is going to go down and it becomes cumbersome to use that. So what we try to do is keep a very simple natural language query processing engine in the front end. So the screen shows you how you can actually type your queries. Okay. So you can say, for example, get devices where patch, and this is a bulletin number. You can say is installed, you can say is not installed, you can do with details, you can do without details. So that gives you a level of control on what kind of information you want to see back, right? So this whole natural language processing, the whole query, to get the kind of software running, the file versions, patches, CPU, memory, all of these things are available as keywords, okay? It's fairly intuitive, but even if it's, if you find a little bit, hard to remember, there'll be a manual that explains what are the things possible. We'll also try to include this information in online help. So that's something that you can always rely on. And that enables the administrators to type the query very quickly, okay, and search through and then keep refining the query. So if you wanted to find out if this patch is not installed, then you can just run that query. If you wanted to find out further details, you can run the query with the details. And every time the query will run in the order of seconds, right? So we've tested this, as I've said before, up to about 100,000 endpoints, and we consistently deliver results across that distributed network of 100,000 endpoints within 30 seconds or so. So on average, it's actually even less. It can be like 15, 20 seconds. Sometimes it can be 30, 40 seconds. We started out this with saying that, we want to make this as realistic and as useful as possible. So we wanted to make sure everything is under a minute. And you'll be happy to note that for most queries, we are definitely well under that minute mark for even up to 100,000 devices. Okay. So the next thing um, is all about the presentation of data, right? So I mentioned that we do real-time streaming analysis of data that comes in. As the data is coming in, you will see that the dashboard starts filling up live. Okay, so the dashboard doesn't wait for all the data to be available. The dashboard starts showing information immediately in the order of seconds with information that it has collected so far. Okay, and as the data is coming in, you can dynamically see it fall into a pie chart, say by device type, by OS type. We'll see a bar graph of the various subnets. You'll see a query execution taking place, and it'll show how many devices are responding and how quickly. Okay, so all of that information is appearing to you as your query is executing, and it will be done. It will be done in the order of seconds still, right? And this representation gives you an immediate view into what's really happening and what you need to do, okay? And all of these elements that you see on the screen, like here as an example, you're seeing some Windows devices here on this top right quadrant on the bottom screen. Um, these are all clickable, right? So you can click on these, and then it'll drill down in and go to a next level where you will actually see the data in the list form, and then you can look at more details of the endpoints, and then you can take some action on them as necessary. So all of that is enabled together, and which was actually critical piece, because if you cannot visualize the data that quickly, then the tool, even for all the information that you collect, it's too hard to actually do something with that information. And the last piece, which is an important thing also to mention, is the remediation piece, right? So once you've identified, which are the machines that need some sort of a remediation, right? You might want to kill a rogue process, you might want to delete some files, you might want to install patches and apply updates. All of these could be various remediation paths, right? So those you can trigger from right from here. So you don't have to. So one of the questions people have asked us in the past is if you have two different solutions, right? So what would happen, right? So if you identify a set of devices here, as you see in the screenshot here, like there are these three devices on which you want to take some action. So if you go to a separate endpoint management tool, just to get down, just to drill down to the point of these three machines would be a challenge in itself, right? And then you would have to actually take care of, taking some action on, these devices over there. So none of that happens here. So what we will do here is we integrate the remediation with a regular endpoint management solution. So of course, as we launch the capabilities and we go through various iterations, the first priority for us is to integrate this with Radia, because a lot of customers have asked this. So we will integrate with Radia. So any remediation action that you take here, for example, if you wanted to upgrade a patch or upgrade the software version or something like that, that will actually do an API call directly into a Radia server that's running. It will actually identify the set of machines. It will entitle the software to those, and it will actually schedule the job so that the patching gets done. So all of that is taken care of right from this console, okay? And at no point in time would you have like two sources of information, right? So two sources of truth. So whatever is being reported is going to be what is truly updated. So whether you look at it from your Radia console or whether you look at it from your Radia Live console, eventually everything will match, and it should really match. Okay. Um, Here's a step-by-step view, like almost like the technical flow of how the information flows. So typically, let's start from the left of the screen where you see all the endpoints. Okay. Um, so the process is, of discovering the characteristics in, the queries will be sent to these endpoints in real time, and then we'll discover certain characteristics of these endpoints. Whether it is the CPU usage, whether it's certain processes running, all of those kind of things, like all these attributes of these machines or endpoints, those will get through. Those will be collected and go through our highly performant network of how the whole Radia Live thing works. We process the results, we aggregate, classify, identify patterns, extract. All of these processing of information takes place in a variety of different servers that are part of the Radia Live itself. Okay, and then immediately go into this visualization mode and come up with these dynamic graphs, data, pie charts, graphs, whatever, bar charts, whatever makes sense for the kind of information you are seeing, and will immediately present that information onto the screen. And from there, you can take action and you can remediate, and then it again, it's a virtuous cycle, and it will go back and affect the endpoints ultimately. So the key benefits that you will get out of this, just having just the fact that you have a real-time insight and check on endpoints at any point in time, you will find ultimately that you will reduce any security incidents and reduce your risk ultimately, okay? And finding and remediating everything from a single pane of glass continues that unification story and make sure that, everything remains cohesive and consistent in your environment. Now, how it works, it's very, very simple. This is the experience that the administrator will have, and towards the end, we'll do a little bit of an animation to see how the experience will be. But Really, it will be all of the endpoint resources on the left, and you have the entire Radia suite in the middle here, which has various modules, and one of them here is the Radia Live we are showing. So information will flow from the endpoint resources into the Radia Live, and the administrator will be able to directly look at the information, deliver, these use cases, solve these business problems around audit, compliance, security, vulnerability, incident response, software license management, or asset utilization, all of that, and then trigger the action again, goes to the Radia endpoint manager, um, which is a single source again, and then goes back and affects the endpoint. So this is the experience that the administrator has in using this tool. Okay. So key value propositions. So what we think are the key differentiators for Radia Live, and this is something that we have talked to many of you about, um, and a lot of you have given us very good feedback on this. Um, the value of real-time results in seconds. So you don't have to wait days and weeks. You're going to get information in less than a minute, right? Typically, in fact, less than 30 seconds. And this is directly information from your endpoints and not from any other database or other repositories. Okay. Typing your query as a free-form text is a big simplifier. You don't have to learn a lot of different things or menu options and wizards and so on. Just type it as you think. Okay. You can get in-place remediation. You'll get quick actions. So you don't have to wait for finding the same kind of device list from another place or another tool. Okay. And instead, you can just trigger the remediation from right there. And the last one is about making this whole process proactive and targeted endpoint security. And the words are carefully chosen, because proactive is because the administrator doesn't have to rely on something coming back passively from your endpoints. As an administrator, you can probe your endpoints and find things which need some fixing. And then you can target the endpoint security, because you can actually just simply affect changes on the machines that you want to, instead of having a blanket statement of, okay, go hit these 10,000 desktop machines over the next 3 weeks and update some patches. No, none of that. We'll just identify specific machines that may be potentially offending and fix those. Okay. So with that, I'll bring you to a little bit of an animation to show how this works. Now, this is a work in progress, but this is a real product implementation. Okay, so you can watch here. So this is a place where the administrator is entering a query. So it's trying to find out what patch is not installed. Um, you know, this is the kind of speed we are talking about here. So we scanned 51,000, almost 60,000 devices now in a matter of 19 seconds. Okay, and we found out that there are these Windows machines, these three of them, they don't seem to have the kind of patches that we are expecting. This particular patch bulletin is not on these. Okay, so we clicked on it. You clicked on that pie chart. You came here. You saw the drill down. You see the three machines. You can decide to remediate one of the machines, or you can select all of them and hit remediate. So what doesn't show up here in this rest of the animation here is, from here it will do an API call in the backend and connect back to Radia and get these patch bulletins delivered, entitled, and delivered to all of these endpoints, and then they'll go ahead and install those. So that's kind of the whole, finding it fast and fixing it fast value proposition that Radia Live brings to the table here. And I hope you got a sense of how this is going to all work. Okay, and that kind of brings me to the end of my presentation. This is something that's coming up very soon. We are taking requests for um, some closed beta trials if we wanted to. So what I would like to do at this point is open this for questions. Okay, and whatever questions you have, and we'll go through the chat window. We'll take questions one at a time. I'll try to answer as many of them as I can. Okay, for the rest, we'll take them offline and make sure that we get back to you with the answers. Okay, and then at the end, Rajesh will explain some of the other logistics, but we'll come to that after we go through some of the questions. So here I would like to open this to questions. Okay, so I'm seeing the questions come in. Some just let me just take a minute here. Okay, so the question is actually a really good one. Is there an API to invoke Radia Live operations from other workflow systems? It's a great question. This is definitely on our roadmap. It is not there certainly in the very first release that you will get. Um, but as I mentioned, I think during this presentation as well as an earlier one I did, at the Radia User Summit. That is certainly certainly our plan. We'll definitely have that API available, and all of these things are building blocks and enabling technologies that we want to create. So we will definitely have an API for that, and there is a roadmap on that. Second question is, how are offline devices handled, and when do they get the live message? So that's actually a really great question. So as of this point in time, this is based on making broadcast queries to endpoints which are on the network. Okay. So in the future, we do plan to have a capability to say that, okay, save a query and execute it every day or every night at such and such a time. And then we'll see, if we catch more machines. But at the end of the day, ultimately, if a machine is just simply offline for days on end, it will be a challenge. We will not be able to find it, but we hope that there will be other operational mechanisms in place to tackle these kind of endpoints. The second one. So the third question, how custom can the questions get beyond the basic file software security? Also an excellent question. So one of the capabilities that we are building is the ability to execute arbitrary scripts. So on Windows, they would to begin with might be WMI queries. Okay, so if you can code this up as a WMI query, we can actually make sure that it gets executed. Um, in future, we are also thinking of PowerShell scripts, as well as on Linux, it will be just normal shell scripts. So those are also options that we will have. Again, it's probably not in the very first release, but that's certainly our plan. Now, the second part of that question was, how custom can the remediation be for the environments that are non-standard? So I think that is probably answered by a similar question. As long as you have a PowerShell script or a shell script that can take care of what you want to do, we can make sure that that does get executed every time. And I see that there are a number of different questions here. So let me just scroll through, because there are many people who have asked questions. So this is another good one. Has Radia Live is Radia Live an extra agent component, or does it use the current Radia agent? So we have thought about it. While it would have been possible for us to build it either way, so what we have decided to do is to keep things extremely simple and lean and streamlined. This is an extra agent that has to be installed on the different agents. Okay, and for that reason, um, um, for that reason, I think we have a different agent that runs. Okay, and let me get back to see if I can answer some of the earlier questions that one gentleman here had asked. How custom can we get? Does Radia Live need a direct line of sight to the node to ask the question queries? So firewalls, etc. So as long as there is network connectivity between the Radia Live server, okay, and all the way to the endpoint, then it should be fine. The queries do go over, there is the technology, underlying technology is actually Kafka clusters. So as long as the Kafka clusters can be joined by the endpoints and the Kafka clusters are all reachable from the Radia Live server, then it should just work. And we've tested this with distributed environments where endpoints were distributed through various cities, so it just works just fine. can Radia Live use um, bandwidth management from Radia? Um, so right now, so our hope is, and then we have done basic testing on this. The Radia Live information itself comes through different channels, and it is a very very small level of information, at least for summary level. Okay, and when the detail levels come, of course, there is more information. So right now we haven't built in any throttling or bandwidth management, bandwidth requirements, because that would slow down the performance. Uh, but it's a trade-off that we have to consider. So in the future, if you wanted to give capability like, well, you would rather have the results a little slower but not use a lot more bandwidth, then that's something we can think of. Right now we don't have anything like that. Another question is about the pricing model. Is it included in our already purchased licenses? That's a favorite question I get. So Radia Live will be priced separately as it's an entirely different architected component. Okay, so that's something that we will announce shortly on how this is going to be priced and what the pricing model is and so on. And then there is a question about the value proposition over products like Tanium. And I think the biggest one that I would highlight here very quickly in the time we have left is the fact that um, it it really is a single integrated system along with your endpoint management system. So you won't have a dichotomy of different tools having different sources of truth, like one system saying a patch level is here, another system saying a patch level is here. So I think that's one key thing. But apart from that, there are a number of other items that I think I want to just leave for another time. Um, because we are running out of time a little bit on in terms of where we want to be. So I wanted to make sure that we run through any other questions remaining. Actually, there is a number of different questions. Let me run through a few more. Um, there's another licensing question. I think I have answered that. It's going to be announced shortly. It will be a separate pricing. It's the is the patch status based on applicability? And that's actually a really good question. Um, I know the entitlements, we are actually aware of a particular uh, idiosyncrasy of Radia where the entitlements are tracked in a different database and hence the reporting is not include the entitlements. So that's a separate issue that we are tracking, but that's more on the Radia side. And once it is done, then it will flow here as well. Can the remediate process use external LDAP? Entitlements in the remediate process use external LDAP. So right now we are, building this based on the LDAP that's with the Radia operations. In the future, we can look at external databases. That's not a problem. I think that should be easily possible. Can live data be turned into an email? So that's an interesting question. So right now, everything is exported directly on the screen, and you can actually take that information and save this as reports and for yourself. Email is not directly included here, but that's another capability that we can definitely consider adding. I don't think that's going to be a problem. The data coming into Radia Live based on different client connects like patch security audit, etc. So the whole Radia Live is based on a separate Radia Live agent infrastructure. So that will be a completely different connect, and it will happen fairly autonomously. I don't think anybody has to take any particular action for that. What is the bandwidth usage like for Radia Live queries? So yeah, there is two levels of information, right? So there is a summary level of information for which it is a very, very small piece of information, of the order of like, 60 to 80 bytes of information per endpoint. So it's very small. And when we have the detail level of information, of course, that depending on the kind of or the level of details it is, it's going to be a little bit more. So we can come up with some sort of a sizing information as we come closer to releasing this. So right now I don't have that information handy. Um, does Radia Live rely on the notify port? As far as I know, it doesn't. It is a completely separate infrastructure, and it connects with the all the information is flowing through Kafka clusters. So that So that's completely different path. Um, Let me see. The other question, okay, it's a good one. If remediation causes any problem, can you back out of the remediation? So right now, all of the remediation actually flows through Radia operations. Okay, so the normal Radia endpoint management, it is only initiated or triggered from Radia Live and not necessarily conducted entirely out of Radia Live. Okay, so given that, I think it really depends on the capability that the admin has to back out of any remediation from a Radia perspective. So he'll see the job and he can take the action directly in the Radia console to the extent that's already possible. Okay. Can we enforce a set of operations remediations periodically? Good question. So yeah, there is a plan in the roadmap to have a whole scheduling capability. So where certain queries and certain remediations would be a corollary, we would be able to schedule on a periodic basis. So we'll definitely be doing that in the roadmap. Again, certainly not in the very first release. Another one, can you discuss the technologies that allow you to get so many real-time responses such a short amount of time? Good question. Like I mentioned before, so this is based on a big data type of technology. So it's basically a complete soup kitchen of Kafka clusters going through a real-time streaming processor based on Spark and a database, NoSQL database of Cassandra, which stores information for later. So all of that is um, is described in the architecture document, and actually along with this Radia Live component, one of the things that I should mention is you'll get a whole configuration server and a service which runs along with it. So this is how you can actually configure your setup for Radia Live, and that's where it will be more clear on how things work. So this is this is this is going to be interesting. I can promise you that. Is this feature targeted for 10.x and above? Um, Excellent question. Excellent question. So we just had a product deep dive last week. Of course, our original focus is certainly to make it available as a Radia 10.x feature as natively as possible along with 10.x. But we do plan to make it available on some of the 9 releases, so particularly 9.2 or 9.1. We will announce those kind of plans shortly, but we are targeting that those will be something that we will be making available. Apart from this, I'm seeing couple of different other different questions. One is a usual question that one tends to get: are these slides available? So certainly, I'll make the recording available also, and at the end of the presentation, we'll find a way to PDF the slide deck and send that out to attendees. So that's not going to be a problem. Um, One other question on the performance and scale. How long or how many endpoints has these been tested with? So as I mentioned, we've gone up to 100,000 endpoints. So you can literally have this work for 1,000 endpoints or 10,000 endpoints or 100,000 endpoints, and amazingly enough, you will hardly see a blip in the performance. So that's kind of the technology that is being used here. So you'll find that very interesting. Um, and the last question is, when this will be available, which is related to the similar question I had before, which is, will you be releasing it with 10.0 or will you be releasing it with 9.0 and so on? So it'll be a mix of everything. So we'll get 10.0 and then finally we'll get 9.2 and 9.1 as well. Is the Radia Live agent continually, another question I got, which is a good one, is it continually collecting information and only transferring it on request? That's an excellent question. Um, so there are certain pieces of information that take time to collect on a regular basis. As an example, right, a particular piece of software installed or is running, right? So those are the kind of information, or a patch level on an endpoint. That's the kind of information that's relatively static. It doesn't change all the time, right? But at the same time, it takes time to collect. So those are the pieces of information that the agent collects as and when there are changes on the machine and has it ready. So when the server pings the endpoint, and actually the agent really, right, the information is readily available. But for other things, like if you're really talking about truly hypercurrent data like CPU utilization, current process table, current utilization of memory and all of that, those are not collected beforehand, but they are actually collected at the point of time the query is executed. So that is truly hypercurrent data. So it's a mix, okay? Um, and yeah, and then one of the questions is just thanking me, which is great. Thank you as well for the excellent questions. Um, I think the flow of questions has slowed down to a trickle here. So we'll make sure that, even if you think of any other questions after the webinar itself, feel free to let me know. I'll make sure that the question gets answered. Um, at this point, I don't see any other questions, and it looks like we are towards the end of the webinar. So I will hand this back to Rajesh for the closing formalities. So Rajesh, over to you.
Sure, Ray. Thank you, Charles. That was wonderful. So again, I think to summarize, I think there will never be in a foreseeable future a world with 100% security. So in this cat and mouse game with Radia Live, you potentially have an opportunity to get on the driver's seat for some real-time identification and remediation to prevent or maybe even reduce the damage inflicted. I mean, this product has resonated quite a bit, and we actually presented this at a CIO conference very recently, and that generated a lot of interest, and so there was a limited beta opportunity that Charles had mentioned. So we have very limited seats for some of you who might be interested in trying this product out in your environment. Of course, please understand it's not GA, so it will have a little bit of kinks. Again, it's limited because we want to make sure that we provide full attention. So we already have some people interested. We have a few more seats open. If you are interested in participating in the beta, please get in touch with your Accelerate account rep, or you can email us at radia@accelerate.com. That is that you're seeing there. So please get in touch with us either way. The expectation from the private beta is very simple. We expect you to spend a little bit of time. Again, there's a relatively low-touch implementation, so it's not a bogged down and enduring months together project. So it's relatively lightweight, and you will see that, and we'll discuss all those parameters and dependencies. So you know what you're signing up for, and at that time you want to back out, that's fine too. But it's definitely low-touch. We would expect that you would provide some access to your environment. We would assume that you would want to try it in your environment. We would also expect you to give us some feedback, and if everything is buttoned up, we don't need your 100% availability, but we can possibly exercise this beta in a time frame of 4 to 6 weeks. And again, we can start based on your availability. So even if you're not sure if you're the right candidate for pilot but would like to explore, definitely reach out to either the rep or write to us, and we can tell you more. Coming back to the logistics part, we will share the video recording, so you'll see that as an offline email. Please do also check your spam folder in case it finds its way there. And if you have any questions that did not get addressed or have other questions, feel free to again email this your email address that you see on the screen, radia@accelerate.com, or try and reach anyone in Accelerate, sales or account team that you interact with. We'll be more than happy to address that. So with that being said, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining the webinar. And with that, we will now conclude the webcast. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, everyone.